All right, today we're going to talk about one of history's greatest unsung heroes. Seriously, this is someone whose name you might even recognize, but I bet you've never really thought about their true impact. It's this amazing story about how, the smallest, quietest actions can end up creating the biggest waves imaginable.
So let's just start with a big question, one that I'm sure you've kicked around in your head before. Can one just ordinary person really change the world? I mean, think about it. When we picture a world changer, we usually think of these larger-than-life figures, right? Famous leaders, brilliant inventors, super charismatic speakers. But what if the real engine of change, the real catalyst, is someone much, much quieter? The whole story we're diving into today, it really boils down to this one simple number. 1. That's it. The power of a single individual.
So let's really dig into this idea, the power of one person, by looking at this incredible case study of a man who absolutely mastered a quieter, but maybe even more powerful kind of influence.
When you think about it, there are kind of two types of influential people in the world. On one hand, you've got the superstar. This is the person we all know, right? The public speaker, the charismatic leader, the one out front. But then there's the connector. This is someone totally different. They're not famous, they're not giving big speeches, they're the good listener, the person who's just trustworthy. They connect people from behind the scenes. And here's the thing. History always remembers the superstars, but so often it's the connectors who are the real hidden catalysts for all that change.
So the person we're looking at today, our perfect example of the connector, is a man named Andrew. And what's so fascinating is that he was never the leader of his group, but without him, that group might never have even had its famous leader in the first place.
So, a little background on Andrew. He was one of the very first disciples of Jesus. But here's what sets him apart. Unlike some of the other big names, his brother Peter or the Apostle Paul, Andrew wasn't a powerful speaker. He wasn't out there giving these big sermons. He didn't write any books. He didn't lead any big movements. His whole thing, what really defined him, was that he was just approachable. He was relational. People trusted him. You could say his superpower wasn't public speaking. It was connecting people.
And believe it or not, Andrew's entire, massive, world-changing impact can be traced back to just 3 introductions. That's it. 3 seemingly small moments. Let's walk through them one by one.
Okay, so introduction number 1. This one was super personal. After Andrew becomes convinced that he's met someone truly incredible in Jesus, who's the first person he thinks of? Not the mayor, not some important official. No, he thinks of his own brother, a regular guy, a fisherman just doing his job.
And look how he does it. He doesn't roll up with a PowerPoint presentation or a big, long-winded speech. He doesn't try to argue or debate. He just goes to his brother Peter and says simply, "We have found the Messiah." And because Peter trusted Andrew, his brother, that's all it took. This wasn't some grand announcement, it was just a quiet recommendation from someone whose opinion he valued. And on the strength of that trust, Peter went with him. Just like that.
All right, let's get to introduction number 2. This one shows a totally different side of Andrew's skill. So picture this. You've got this massive, hungry crowd on a hillside. We're talking thousands and thousands of people. And the other disciples, they're kind of freaking out. They see this giant problem with zero solution. No food, no money. They're basically ready to throw in the towel and just send everyone home.
But Andrew, he sees things differently. He doesn't see a hopeless situation. He sees potential. So he starts walking through the crowd, looking around, and he finds this one small boy with a pretty tiny lunch. Now, anyone else would have just walked right by, right? Dismissed it as totally useless. But Andrew saw value in that tiny contribution. He didn't have the big solution himself, but he found a resource, no matter how small, and he brought it forward. He made the introduction. Okay, the third and final introduction. And this one might be the most revealing of all. A group of Greeks show up. Now you gotta understand, at the time, these guys were total outsiders. They weren't part of the Jewish faith, and there were some pretty significant social and religious barriers. But they were curious. They wanted to meet Jesus.
And this part is so important. They don't go to Andrew first. They approach another disciple, a guy named Philip. And Philip, he hesitates. He's not sure what to do with these outsiders. So what does he do? He goes and gets Andrew. I mean, that one move tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? Andrew had a reputation. He was the go-to guy, the one who didn't see all those barriers between people. He was the bridge. And of course, true to his nature, Andrew immediately brings them to Jesus.
So let's just recap for a second. We've got 3 pretty small acts, right? Introducing your brother to someone, pointing out a kid with a snack, and bringing a few curious strangers over for a chat. Seems pretty minor. But the ripple effects from these three simple connections, oh, they were absolutely astonishing.
Remember that fisherman, Andrew's brother Simon? Well, he became Peter, the most prominent leader of the entire early Christian movement. People call him the rock that the church was built on. Just think about that. Without Andrew's simple, trusted introduction, one of the most influential figures in all of history might have just stayed a fisherman his whole life.
And the boy with that tiny lunch? That small introduction? It became the catalyst for the famous miracle of feeding the 5,000. But get this, that number, 5,000, that was just counting them in. Most historians figure the actual crowd, once you include women and children, was probably closer to 20,000 people. 20,000 people, all fed because one person took the time to see value in a tiny, overlooked contribution.
And finally, bringing those few curious Greeks in for a meeting, symbolically, this was a massive, massive deal. It basically represented the moment that this message started to break out of its small local bubble. It was the beginning of it crossing cultural and religious lines, transforming from a local movement into what would become a global religion, a truly world-changing shift that all started because one guy was willing to welcome in the outsiders.
So what's the big lesson in all this? I mean, this isn't just a dusty old story. It's a real practical model for a kind of influence that really any of us can have.
Let's call it the Andrew model. It's this idea, this theory of influence, where your real impact doesn't come from being the loudest person in the room or the one with the fanciest title. It comes from being the most trusted. It's about creating change not with these huge grand gestures, but through simple, crucial connections.
And you can actually break it down into 3 really simple steps. Step 1, see the value in everyone, even and maybe especially the people that everyone else overlooks, just like that boy with his lunch. Step 2, build genuine relationships, the kind that are based on real trust, so that when you say something, people actually listen, just like Andrew's brother did. And finally, step 3, make the connection. Be the one who builds the bridge for other people, just like Andrew did for those Greek outsiders.
And here is maybe the most important insight of all. Andrew didn't feed 20,000 people. He didn't become the leader of the church. He didn't have all the answers. He just introduced people to the one who could. See, he understood that his role wasn't to be the hero, but to be the one who introduces the hero. And that right there is a really powerful shift in how we think about what it means to make a difference.
And that really leaves us with a final question to think about, doesn't it? Who are the Andrews in our own world? You know, the quiet connectors in our offices, in our neighborhoods, in our families, the ones who are building all these bridges and creating these huge ripples without any of the credit or the fanfare. And maybe, just maybe, the more important question is, how can we start to become one of them?